The survival guide
Yeah,
to
so going back to the, the triangle that's used, the model that's used in cognitive behavioral therapy. So we can, if we become aware of our thoughts, that's the first step, is becoming aware of our thoughts, noticing what those thoughts are. Because if we don't know what we're thinking, how can we change that? So the first step is awareness, like really being aware of those thoughts. And there's a number of different tips and tricks on how to change those thoughts. I'm not going to get too far into that right now. That could be a whole other topic. But when we learn how to change those thoughts, when we do start practicing that, we begin to have a different feeling. And those feelings will generate a different behavior. So for example, if we have a thought of that's more focused on hope and healing, we're probably going to have a feeling that's more aligned with that thought, which is potentially is going to create a higher probability that our behaviors are going to align with healing. For example, maybe I'm going to be drinking a lot more water versus drinking soda and alcohol, for example. So our behaviors are going to align with those thoughts. So that's one aspect of it, changing the thoughts, right? Which is sounds like that doctor that you just mentioned earlier was talking about, which is very powerful. The other piece in which that I specialize in is coming at it from the angle of the emotions. So remember we said thoughts can change the emotions, then can change the behavior and the outcome. What if we could change the emotions? If we can change the emotions, we can also change the behavior, and we can make the thoughts become a lot easier. So one of the things that I work with people is changing the internal terrain, changing the physiology of the body and the brain by resolving emotions. What does that mean exactly? Because a lot of people, they're like, what do you mean resolving emotions? I don't understand what you're saying, Lori. So the science, and I won't get too much into the science either, but I want to really simplify it to kind of paint the picture of what this looks like. So going back to Dr. Candace Pert's research on molecules of emotion. So she, talks about how these are information substances. They're kind of like chemical messengers. Here's what happens with emotions. First of all, I always encourage people to try to be mindful of the verbiage about emotions, because sometimes we hear there's certain bad emotions. I really don't think any emotions are bad. There are easy to feel emotions. They're kind of like energy boosting, energy producing emotions. And then there are these energy draining emotions, difficult to feel emotions, such as frustration, anger, sadness, grief. But all of those emotions help us to respond to our environment appropriately. So I don't think any of them are bad in and of themselves. They get a bad rap sometimes because sometimes we choose a behavior to deal with that emotion or cope with that emotion that's not constructive. Sometimes we choose destructive ways to manage or cope with those emotions. So they get a bad rap. So anger gets a bad rap. A lot of different difficult to feel emotions get a bad rap. But in and of themselves, they help us respond to our environment appropriately. Imagine if we lived in a world where nobody got angry. Part of what the beauty of anger, one of the beauty, aspects of anger, is it helps us to take action. If I never got angry about anything, I might just be so complacent and never take action. Anger kind of produces that sense of no, this is wrong. I want to see the right thing done. And so we take action. So that's just kind of a little side note on emotions. But here's what happens. We experience an emotion, we feel it in our body, right? We know the difference between what it feels like to feel sad versus what it feels like to feel mad. It's a different chemistry. When we have those emotions, ideally, we would express the emotion through a variety of different ways, either, verbally stating it or, writing it down. Some people, use poetry or art or music or whatever. A lot of different ways that we can express the emotion. And then that emotion, ideally, this is in a healthy emotional cycle, that emotion will go through this last stage called extinction. Basically, what that means is the emotion comes up in the body, we express it, we feel it, we let it kind of flow through us, and then it exits the body. That is the healthy, ideal way in which we experience and process emotions. Here's the problem. The problem lies in when that emotion does not go through that final stage called extinction. It doesn't exit the body, it stays stuck in the body. And this happens to all of us at times. And there's a few different things that can cause a higher probability of that cycle getting interrupted. One of them being if our immune system is suppressed, if we're feeling under the weather, if we're in an unsafe environment. If we're in an unsafe environment, we're probably not going to be like, oh, let's just let that go. And, we're kind of in that state of fight or flight. We got to protect ourselves. We have to be on all the time. Or even if we perceive ourselves to be in an unsafe environment, maybe we're not really unsafe, but we think we are. So there's a number of different reasons why this cycle kind of gets interrupted. Now, when that emotion gets stuck in the body, remember, it's a molecule. It's physiological. It's not a psychological phenomena. It's not this abstract idea. Emotions are physiological. So they travel and migrate to different parts of the body. They can go to our liver. They can go to our gallbladder. They can go to our stomach, our spleen, our big toe. I mean, it can go anywhere. And over time, if that emotion, a molecule, continues to stay stuck in the body, it can begin to cause unwanted symptoms. And that's kind of, what you mentioned at the very beginning of talking about unexplained aches and pains. This is where I see so many clients who have gone to doctors, who've ran tests, who have, tried different medications, and they're like, the doctor said everything is fine, but I'm still in pain. I don't understand. And this is exactly what I was witnessing when I was working with that doctor back in 2009, where I was seeing the manifestation of physical symptoms, like people with rashes that were not clearing up, people with allergies that came on all of a sudden and they didn't know why, people with back pain, people with jaw pain, neck pain, you name it, kind of pain. And oftentimes the emotional piece, again, remember, it's physiological, the emotional piece was the missing link that was contributing to that pain. Now, sometimes it wasn't just the sole reason or the only reason why they're experiencing the pain. Maybe there were some other contributing factors. Maybe there's an environmental toxin like mold or something like that was, stressing the body. There's a number of other things that can put stress on the body, not just emotion.
This was, so to say, you had all these other factors, but then this was the one that sort of like you had, like, say, maybe the factor like mold was on, say, first base, or like something like this was on third base, but then really it was the emotions that hit the home run and caused everything to be worse.
I love that example of how you describe that. I have not used that actually, but that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's like, all the pieces of the puzzle were there except for one slice, and there's like, where is that other piece? Like, where's the other factor? And it was usually the emotions, because emotions are generally, when you go to the doctor and they run a blood test, a blood panel, they're not running a panel for, well, let's check your blood for anger. Let's check your blood for fear and anxiety and worry. That's not something we can test in a lab. So oftentimes it's generally kind of below the surface. It's not something we can point our finger at and pinpoint initially. But over these years, when I just saw how miraculous people's health improved as a result of being able to pinpoint those emotions. And basically where the healing part came in was bringing that emotion through that last final stage called extinction that we talked about earlier. So identifying the emotion, which there's a whole methodology that I use in order to identify the emotions, and I can pick it up within seconds. And we won't get into that too much right now, but there's a way to do that. That's what I specialize in, and I work with clients all around the globe, so they don't have to be in person, which is amazing. But there's a fast and easy way that's gentle. I think that's one of the things that really stands apart from a lot of other interventions is it's very gentle on the nervous system. And my clients, share that it helps them so significantly. Like I have one client that recently, her desire was to stop drinking alcohol for years. And after, I think it was just 1 or 2 sessions, the desire went away. And she was just like, what? I don't understand. Like I'm around alcohol. This is amazing. I don't even have the desire to drink anymore. And so that's one example. I have another example of a gentleman who had tried so many different things for his back pain, and his back pain just kept getting worse and worse and worse. He's been suffering for 8 years. And imagine when you're in so much physical pain, it not only, it impacts every area of your life. He was an entrepreneur, so now his business was suffering. His marriage was suffering. Every aspect of his life was suffering as a result of the back pain. He tried nutrition, he tried chiropractic, he tried different exercises. After just a few sessions of us working together in, identifying that, yes, in fact, there were some of the physiological molecules stuck in his system that was contributing to the back pain. When we were able to identify that, resolve that in a very safe, gentle, effective way, guess what happened? His back pain improved by over 80%. He was just like, what is this? How is this working? I have so many stories for you. I won't get into, I could really go on and on. I'm very passionate about this work, and because it really changes people's lives. Because our health, to think about it, our health is really everything. When our health suffers, it impacts our own internal state. It can rob us of our peace. It can destroy our relationships. It can impact the way in which we make money. Everything. Our health is so vitally important.
Is that when you start like going in this dark rabbit hole that it's hard to come out of, because now you feel bad, now you're thinking bad, and your emotions are bad, and it's just like going deeper and deeper. And then it's not until you can have someone like you who can really explain what's going on that you can sort of get out the hole and look at the light.
Yeah, I think that's another really great way to describe it, because I think that how you just described it now is a lot of similar types of ways in which my clients have shared it. It feels like they're drowning. It feels like there's no hope, and it's just this, like you said, like a dark, deep hole, and there's a spiral down. So when we can interrupt that by getting some of those unresolved emotions out of the body, which can take a tremendous amount of stress off of the body, the mind, the nervous system. It can start improving physical things that have been, challenging your health. It starts to bring you up, right? It starts to bring you up and elevate you to a feeling that, wow, maybe there is hope. I actually had a client who just finished my 90-day program. That's kind of my foundational program. And she went through the 90-day program with me, and her wife called me to say, Lori, in the 30 years of my wife seeking treatment from the VA, she's a veteran, different treatments from her doctors, different medications she's tried, she's like, I have never seen such a tremendously positive difference in her than I've seen in the 90 days that she's worked with you. And that to me was just like, oh my gosh, I just, the tears, because it's just it's really powerful. It's really powerful. And so not only was it impacting my client, but her wife as well. It has a ripple effect. When we take ownership for our health and healing, even though a lot of the things that happen to us, especially in our earlier years, are probably not our fault. Even if we were victim to adversities and challenges in our earlier years, or even in our adult life, when we begin to take ownership of our own personal health and healing, and sometimes with the help of a professional, um, when we do that for ourselves, first and foremost, it is the most powerful thing that we can do for other people. Because when we start to heal ourselves, everybody else around us is positively impacted by that.
No, I agree with you, and just as in the time frame for right now, I feel like especially with the Zoom, it's so short. But if you could just share how anyone can connect with you, and then also if you have free time, if we can set up a date where maybe for like an hour and a half, if we can go into this a little bit more. I know my audience as well as myself would love to, and like if it wasn't for Zoom, I'd be sitting here and then it'd be almost Christmas and we could still be talking about this because I think it's so important, and I think this approach really needs to be looked at more, and um, it's sort of negated because of people like big pharma and things like that. I'm not putting that down or saying it's wrong, but really when you can sort of understand your emotions and your thoughts, then you can have the outcome you want, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I'd be more than happy to do another podcast with you, and maybe even, maybe even getting some feedback from the listeners on maybe some specific things that they would like us to dive a little bit deeper on. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, so what I can do is to like I'll have this edited really soon, like maybe within like 20-30 minutes, release it, I'll share it with you, and then sort of get some feedback from them, and then we could go little bit deeper because I also wanted to know a little bit more on the journey of your healing, and like you said, you had this growth, and then now I can see it's gone, and
Yes, I'm cancer free.
yes, and I'm glad. I'm happy for that, and so that in itself should just be a defining factor and wake up people. Maybe what she's saying is true.
Yeah, I would love to do that, Amar. And so, to answer your other question about how people can reach me, am I able to do a screen share? I can
Yes.
actually
Yeah.
show
Do I
listeners.
have to wait 1 second? Okay. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that.
Okay. Give me just a minute to find, I think it's here. Um, okay, so here's my website. My website is healthyholistics.net.
Okay.
So people can visit my website, and probably within 30 seconds or so, there'll be a pop-up asking if they would like resource or access to my free resources, free stress tools. But that you can also find it here by going to more and going to free resources. And they can sign up for my free resources. I have a couple of private Facebook groups where I share a lot of free tips and tools on how to manage stress, and talking about kind of getting into more of the ins and outs of going a little bit deeper on various things that you and I talked about, we touched on today. So those are free resources for anybody that's interested. So they can go to my website, healthyholistics.net, and they can click on free resources, and that will be emailed to them directly. And they can choose, whichever resources they want to access. So that is the best way. And then there's these little icons here at the bottom. If they want to follow me on Facebook, I have a Facebook page, and Instagram as well. The Instagram is Healthy Holistics. So that is the best way to access my free resources.
Okay, and then last thing is, Lori, if you can send us off with a quote, maybe it's a quote that's been resonating with you more than recently, and we'll end with that.
A famous quote. Oh, let's see. You put me on the spot here. What would be a famous quote that I'm really, actually, there's a quote that I just recently posted on my Instagram. Let me pull that up. I don't have it memorized by heart, but I really like what he had to say. And this is, let me go to my Instagram here. So I'm not sure if I'm saying his name properly, Dr. Gabor Mate. I'll just kind of see if you can recognize him. It's not really that clear, but anyway, this is what he said, and I just posted this recently, and I love what he said because it totally aligns with, what you and I have been talking about today. He said, when you shut down emotion, you're also affecting your immune system, your nervous system. So the repression of emotion, which is a survival strategy, then becomes a source of physiological illness later on. So that's I really like that quote, but I'd like to piggyback on that quote and say, but there's hope for healing. Okay, so that's really my takeaway message is there's hope for healing, because I know that there's so much research out there that talks about all the ill health outcomes and statistics of when we suppress these emotions. But my message to the listeners is that there really is hope for healing. And I have story after story after story, and even I have my own personal stories of my own personal healing with these types of interventions and techniques. So there's hope. There's hope for healing.
Okay. Thanks again, Lori, for shedding your insight and your expertise, and I'm definitely looking forward to conversing again.
Me too. Thank you so much, Amar, for allowing me to be a guest on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, consistently.